Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Singularity Lab, your home for breaking stories in science, technology, and futurism. We've got an amazing show for you today. I'm so excited. But before we get started, let's bring in our co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, Luis Jimenez. Luis, what's going down with you?
What is shaking, brother?
Ooh,
I just realized my mic was far away from me. Hello, everyone.
All good, man. I'm excited. We've got a killer show today.
Indeed, we do. Lot of controversy. Lot of controversy in this warp bubble thing.
Woo! I love it. I went on Reddit today, and I searched warp bubble, and I found probably 8 to 10 posts that had at least 20,000 upvotes on the warp bubble on this release that came out of the debrief by our lead guest today, Christopher Plain. But before we get there, Luis, why don't we do something fun as we do here on the Singularity Lab, and quickly talk about our logical fallacy or cognitive bias of the day. For those of you who don't know, a logical fallacy or cognitive bias is something that your brain does in order to make sense of a very complex universe with the limited computing power that it has. Now, it's not your fault if you have a cognitive bias or logical fallacy, but the more we know, the more we can affect it. All right, so today's logical fallacy is the burden. I don't know if you can see this or not. The burden of proof. Saying that the burden of proof lies not with the person making the claim, but with someone else to disprove it. Bertrand declares that a teapot is, at this very moment, in orbit around the sun between the Earth and Mars, and that because no one can prove him wrong, the claim is therefore valid. Boom. We know that's silly. Man, I'm so excited.
What's a good example of that, though? Would you say?
Well, that was one example. Well, that was a pretty dumb example. Let's see. What would be all right? So if I believe in a supreme being, you can't disprove that a supreme being exists. Therefore, I'm right, and the burden of proof lies on you to disprove my my belief.
Supreme being, eh?
You digging into that one, are you?
I would give you Chris Hemsworth.
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Thor.
Yeah, as a supreme being. Or our next guest, Christopher Plain.
That'll
be a toss-up.
By the way, so I am moving here very soon, which is why I've been in the weeds quite a little bit lately, and that's why my office, my studio here seems to be shrinking. We're actually packing up boxes and getting organized to move. So it's been a wild ride, bro. But
I mean, when are you gonna be settled, do you think?
Well, the home closes on the 21st, but we'll actually be out of town for that. And then we get back on the 24th, and our stuff supposedly should be moved in. So we'll be moving into our new house on Christmas Eve, and our stuff should be there. Fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see what happens. What's up, Meat Cutter? Ryan Sprague in the house. Matthew Riot. What's going on with you? Thomas Fessler. It's amazing to have you guys. I can't, in good conscience, leave this man in the green room any longer. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Plain is a stand-up comedian, fiction author, and the prolific head science writer at the Debrief. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Christopher Plain.
Gentlemen,
what's going
to be
on?
Here. Ready for some action today. Ready for action, my friends.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I mean, you broke this warp bubble, and whoa, did you poke a hornet's nest here with this one? So yeah, man, I can't wait to get into this.
So were you surprised? Like I was a little surprised, right? So I was excited for your article. You've been kind of hyping it up a little bit for a couple of weeks. Sure. You've been actually talking to Sonny for quite a while, developing this article.
Going back to June.
Going back to June. Okay. So were you surprised with the feedback that you saw? Or maybe, you know what, why don't we just kick it back to you? Give us the whole workup. Tell us how this article came to be. And Yeah, the floor is yours, my friend.
This is why I'm in love with you, Michael. People ask me, they go, why are you in love with Michael? I say, this is it, because he's got a handle on things. All right. So the Debrief was founded a little over a year ago. I got hired December 8th. Yesterday is my 1-year anniversary. It took about 6 months to really establish credibility for both, for the Debrief and myself, in this arena. So I had written a number of articles about warp drives. I wrote about the Lentz drive. I wrote about the guy who was trying to patent the one in Chicago. I wrote about a number of these like cutting edge theories, and all of them had a common thread. It was this Alcubierre metric, this Alcubierre warp drive from back in the 1990s, and in particular, the Alcubierre White metric, which the second half of that is Harold G. Sonny White, a former engineer at NASA. So every time I would write one of these stories, I would shoot this guy an email, right? And I would, Sonny, we're legit. The Debrief is growing. And we were really, by the spring, we were really cooking. So I said, but people like him that have had as much mainstream success as they have and have something theoretical like this kind of named after him, I think they're a little cautious, right? It took a long time, a lot of work. And MJ calls me one day, MJ Benias, the editor-in-chief at the Debrief, and he says, Chris, I have us a meeting with Sonny White. And I'm the alternative propulsion guy, exotic propulsion, advanced propulsion, whatever term you want to use, that's my beat. So we sit in on this meeting with Sonny, everything is straight, and he says, hey, we're going to just do a feature on him, right? Because at that point, he hadn't done an exclusive interview since he had left NASA and took all his warp drive work with him and the entire EagleWorks lab, which he founded with him, to a private company called Limitless Space, the Limitless Space Institute. Okay. And that was a big deal, but he did no interviews about that. He didn't talk about it to anyone. So I got this big exclusive. So I spent an hour talking to Sonny, just like we're doing here. And he told me repeatedly, call me Sonny. So that's how I refer to him. And he likes to call me Bud. Now, I just think that's him being from Texas, and he calls everyone Bud, but every email says Bud. So I'm sitting down with Sonny White, and I do a full interview, all the projects he's doing. His whole background is just a total gentleman, exactly how I was hoping. I was a little bit of a fan, having covered enough stories that included his name, that he just kind of at the end of the thing, he says, hey, I have a big announcement coming. And now here we are in the end of June. He says it's probably first week of August or so. But, depending how things go with your feature and depending how some other things shape up, I'd like to invite you to this presentation I'm doing when we get close. I say, okay, I get this all the time. These scientists, they talk to you, and at the end of the interview, they go, hey, can you take me off the microphone? And then they tell you about the crazy stuff they're working on, right? And so sure enough, right? So I got crazy. I work at the Debrief. I'm a comedian, not a scientist. So I'm going to write about the craziest, most out there stuff. As long as the scientists are legit, as long as it's peer reviewed, those sort of things, I'm doing it. So August comes around, I go to this presentation. It's the video that's embedded within my article from the AIAA conference, and where they were doing a conference on alternative propulsion. So I sit down, I watched this entire presentation. We've all, if you've clicked on my article and actually watched it, it's a very dry, very theoretical presentation about the manifestation of a warp bubble at the micron scale, not not quantum scale, but real world, like physical material that's measurable, not some weird property of the quantum realm, but a physical manufactured thing that will make a warp bubble. So I sit through that presentation, and like all the people that objected to my story initially, I came out of that presentation going, all right, it's theory, it's cool, I'll definitely write about it, but I'm not going to write about it in August. The summer season is slow for news. Like I'll push it off to the fall. So the fall comes around, and I'm trading a couple of emails with Sonny about images for the story and some other things in his presentation. And an email, I congratulate him in that process. Hey, congratulations on the creation of an analog of a warp bubble in your laboratory.
When you say analog,
right? Okay, so here's the magic moment, Michael. Thank you for stopping me right there. Because in science, analog is a term used regularly. But of course, me as a comedian with no science background who writes about science, I learn tons of terms all the time. But I use the term analog. Well, an analog is, for instance, like you make an analog of a black hole in the lab. But you don't make a real black hole or you'll suck up the lab and the whole planet, right? So he emails
That's the fear.
Back.
That's the concern.
Yeah, right. So that is among the concerns of making a black hole in a lab.
Right.
Is the sucking in of the lab. Yes.
Of course.
So Sonny emails me back with that magic quote that's right in the lead of my story. Where he says, Chris, just to be clear, this is not an analog. This is a real warp bubble, albeit tiny and humble in scale, hence the significance. And this is like October.
And this, so this is October. This is way before this article launches. Launched on what, December 6th?
Running like
or what? We're 3 days into it?
In place, right? I start so like I call up MJ and I go, I'm gonna, warp bubble. And he goes, make sure all the math is right, make sure the science was.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here going, I'm watching this blowback and I'm going, there's no way MJ just let Chris Plain throw out some bullshit.
I got the story in August. You guys read it in the beginning of December, right?
Okay, right.
So, and I'll admit, for a period of time, I'm just like, this is theory. This dude didn't make no warp bubble, so
right.
I'm rolling with it. I'll get it out when it gets out. He's been a gentleman to me, and
so MJ comes back to you and says, listen, let's make sure this is legit.
Dot your I's, cross your T's.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Your editor-in-chief at the debrief says, dot your I's, cross your T's. Make sure, go back, make sure. Okay. I'm tracking.
All right. So I confirm with Sonny, not an analog, a real warp bubble. Yes, Chris, a real warp, tiny, but real. Okay. So at this point, I send the peer-reviewed paper that he has given me the link to some physicists that have helped me on other stories or that I have written other stories about. And that's my job, is to, if I'm going to write something with an explosive headline. Don't get me wrong. I write about research all the time where somebody says, birds are using the Earth's magnetic field or whatever. And I've got a press release.
or like birds aren't real, stuff like that.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Yes, birds aren't real. Right. So I get these stories all the time that are mundane enough and simple enough that although they're interesting, I write them as a short 700-800 word news story. I do the fundamental research. If it's peer reviewed, I look up the journal. I read the abstract. There's a lot of trying to understand science in this sort of job, because that is my job, is to take this complex stuff and communicate it to people like me who want to go is this guy building a warp craft in his facility, right?
Right.
All right. So this is where it gets good. So I've dotted my the people start coming back and they're like, Chris, this looks like a real warp bubble. That's what I'm getting back from scientists. And they're saying, as far as again, there's this whole Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff. We'll get into that in this argument about the physics and stuff.
Because there's two controversies. Controversy number one is about whether or not this was an analog or a real life warp bubble. And controversy number two is the issue with Eric Davis, which we'll get into later. So let's not hold you up.
So I go through all of this. I have a couple more emails back and forth with Sonny. I send emails to MJ, and he says, dude, run with this. Give me the headline. Give me all the copy. I'll do all the checking when it comes to me. And it goes through all the proper steps that you have to do when you're writing something like this. Now, again, we don't know we have an exploding story, but we know it's significant in science that in warp theory, that's what it's always been, whether it's Alcubierre or White or Lentz or Johnny Martire in Switzerland or any of these people that have really mathematically elegant solutions to warp drives. They are just that. So I said, all right, this is where I know I have something real. So comes around to, everything checking out. The story goes out. Story goes out Monday morning. So we have a open door, at least I do, an open door policy on Twitter where my DMs are open. And my belief is if you have something explosive, you need to be able to answer questions. And I said, hey, there are going to be questions. And the questions first started being about, the kind of the Eric Davis stuff, like, the physics. But I started noticing a theme from what I thought were pretty legit people, not just the angry people on Twitter, but people that were privately DMing me. They're like, hey, Chris, I'm a PhD physicist, and this is the area I work in. And not the wise guys fighting with Tim McMillan on Twitter, my friend Jeremy McGowan getting into it with Tim, who I love, Jeremy. But, it's not that. It's legit people saying, man, like, this is a great story, and it sure looks like what they have is real, but it sure looks like theory and proposal. So, email number 1, I got 3 here for you. So, Sonny I just email Sonny and I go, hey man, people are making me nervous.
So that was what I was going to ask you. So did you email him and say, hey, look, I'm getting people saying that this
you'll
is
get
theoretic.
There. Trust me, you will get there. That is email number 2 of 3. Number 1 is just his first email back where I said, hey, are you sure of all of this? Like, I haven't put the debrief in a weird position. And he says, howdy, Chris. Hope you're doing well. I think the article you wrote is excellent and is generating some interest, as you indicated. I was contacted by a few media outlets with questions that are technically already answered in your article, but I answered them anyway. Due to strong interest, you may pick up a touch of flack. Always seems to happen in this area. Just remind yourself of Teddy Roosevelt, the man in the arena. You took the time to try and understand the material. You took the time to write the article. There is no shortage of folks watching football on Sunday that feel obliged to tell Tom Brady how to be a quarterback, but they aren't on the field. Godspeed, Sonny. Okay, all I saw in that email was you took the time to try and understand the material. Right? Like, kind words, real nice, but I immediately went,
you went, oh shit, did I screw this up somehow?
Yeah, I don't know. I forget which show when we're on the radio or not, so you can say shit on the lab.
Yeah, we can say shit here.
So, labs wide open.
So I go, man, look, this is why I write about science. This isn't politics. This isn't opinion. Facts are facts. That's what science is. So I suck it up. I write a message to MJ and I go, Sonny's been contacted by other media, and he's given me a lukewarm response. Here's tomorrow morning's headline. And some other media outlet is Sonny White bursts Debrief's warp bubble. Warp bubble at the Debrief, just plain fiction. Any variation on warp bubble, plain fiction. I write fiction novels, people. There's a reason for that. All right. So MJ goes, God. Chris, look, man. He goes, you told me everything was kosher. MJ. He's like, you got to fix it. If there's a problem here, you go find it. So here's what I wrote to Sonny.
Okay.
Hi, Sonny. Sorry for living in your email box. I've received a lot of feedback, including what I would describe as a rising tide of folks saying my headline was inaccurate. I was, of course, going off your direct quotes and my previous research rather than a complex understanding of the study, but I felt sure and still feel sure of what you said, that this is not an analog, but a real, albeit tiny warp bubble. And I put his own words in quotes to him. I said, my editor-in-chief, MJ, who you have met and who has CC'd here, is concerned that they may be accurate, meaning the critics, and that I may have misread your sentiment. Now, what's not said there is because I'm a moron, right? I'm a comedian. So, and I'm writing the email, but I'm letting him know. Anyone who read my Thanksgiving stories, entire section in there titled, I'm dumb. And I explain why all these scientists I talked to were smarter than me. I'm much smarter than Luis, don't get me wrong. But the scientists.
That's fair.
All right. So I said, so, Sonny, if you don't mind, could you either confirm or deny the creation of an actual warp bubble in your lab? Or is this all just math and theory, and I did truly miss your point? Thanks again, Sonny. It's been a wild ride. Your newest bud, Chris, because as I said, he calls me Bud. And this is what I received. Are you guys ready?
I'm chopping.
Yes.
The bit.
Because
I'm bearing down on it.
MJ, so he replied, "Gents, hope this helps. Our detailed numerical analysis of our custom Casimir cavities helped us identify a real and manufactural nanomicrostructure that is predicted to generate a negative vacuum energy density as such that it would manifest a real nanoscale warp bubble, not an analog, but the real thing. This has not been done before in the literature, hence its significance. The use of the term real versus analog comes from the understanding that we often use analogs in the lab to explore things like black holes, where we cannot make a real one in the lab. If we make this structure, it will manifest a real warp bubble, not an analog. Perhaps the title is a matter of semantics. It could alternately read, right here, by the way, I'm already in tears in the middle of this email. DARPA-funded researchers accidentally discover how to make the world's first warp bubble. And then he says the bottom of the narrative has a number of quotes from me that should clearly calibrate the reader, but you might want to change your lead paragraph a bit too. Now, keep in mind, researchers don't read our stories before they go out. So every once in a while, we'll get an email from a researcher saying, you need to change this, you need to change that. Every one of those has been like a misspelling or whatever. I've never had the math or the science wrong. So his new version of my lead paragraph would say, warp drive pioneer and former NASA warp drive specialist, Dr. Harold G. Sonny White, has reportedly discovered a micro nanoscale structure that can be manufactured and is predicted to manifest an actual real-world warp bubble. And according to White, this is the first of its kind breakthrough, blah, 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 sets a new, and he just left the rest of my wording there. So, I did not understand that analog is a term scientists use. So when I just said, congratulations on another piece of funky math, and I used a term I didn't understand, meant something else to someone like him, we ended up here. So in the world of all warp drives are theory, and in the world of we have a guy who made a warp bubble, we now have a new middle. We have a blueprint, right? To make us completely insane and make me completely insane. We now have, here's how you build it. And I even before that email, I have emails back and forth where I'm asking, hey, about this warp bubble, did you guys use metamaterials? And like, oh no, regular materials were used, blah, blah, blah. And the micron craft we propose in the paper, which I knew there was a proposed different thing, would use these base level materials, whatever. I was convinced that, I had the right thing. Every answer he gave me from that point forward just reinforced my misunderstanding of what analog versus real world. But the bottom line is, although he is confident that he now can go build this little thing and have a real world warp bubble in his lab, he has not made such a thing. No.
Okay. Whew! Got it. So Sonny believes, based on his data, that he has predicted the materials needed and the science that should be done in order to create the world's first warp bubble. It's not been made, and it's not happened in reality.
And so if you'll have Mark.
And so
Sokol
did you guys?
and,
go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
You'll have Mark Sokol and Jeremiah Popp from the Falcon Space later on.
Yeah.
So this is what happens in this world of alternative propulsion. We have theory and we have practice. And the two rarely meet because the vast, vast, vast majority of these alternative propulsion things are just way too expensive to build, design, and test. But the ones that are testable, guys like Mark and Jeremiah and these sort of people, that's where they come in. Even though they're fringe guys, they will take these theories. They've taken theories from NASA about anti-gravity, and they will go test them. So on one side, you got that. On the other side, you got pure theory. Sonny has now moved the ball halfway. He's now said, the number one question I get asked in warp theory is, how do we build something? How do we test it? Here's the blueprint. But did he do it yet? No. He never claimed to me he did. I misunderstood him. It really stinks, but I would rather get it right than just blow it off. I could have blown off this show. MJ changed the article the next morning to reflect the wording from White. I could have completely ignored it, but I said, you know what? I put this thing out there. I think it's important to note this significance, that had I understood it correctly, I still think it's a huge story. I still think we're in a new place, and we now have a testable, this is the number one thing in science is give me what's testable between a theoretical physicist and an applied physicist is what is testable. So now applied physicists have something to test, maybe even Sonny and his group themselves.
Right. And it doesn't sound like Sonny made it easy on you when he's talking about semantics, but he really, at the last one, he does come back and he's very clear that it's a predictive model.
Well,
not an actual...
you heard my email to him. I didn't leave any room. At that point, my belief that I just always understood it. Back in August, like I said, I was with everybody else. I watched the presentation. I read the paper. I said it's a theoretical model to build a warp bubble at the nanoscale. So I sat on it for months. And then it was in October when we were exchanging that he says,
no, it's not an analog.
Congratulations on building an analog. And he says, no, just so you're clear, Chris, we haven't constructed an analog. We have created and manufactured an actual microscope, that.
I don't understand what was he misleading you? I don't understand.
That has not been my experience with him. I can tell you there's a lot of anger with Sonny because he lives in that middle zone. There's guys who have extreme ideas, and then there are guys who DARPA and NASA and the Air Force Research Labs pay to pursue their extreme ideas. Sonny is in that second category. And so a lot of researchers, I'll get into this when we get into the second half of the controversy, but there's a lot of people that would like to see Sonny not succeed for their own funding reasons, for jealousy as well. And for all I know, Sonny has people on his list that he would like to not see succeed. I'm not saying it's a one-way street here.
Right.
But yeah, my belief is that he was not trying to mislead me, that I literally misunderstood the term analog. And because I'm a science writer, he just assumed, I understood it. When we had our first interview about Limitless Space, he would throw these complex things at me. And because I have a general understanding from my job, I would be able to answer competently. He told me at the end of the interview, wow, you knew so much more about physics and science than I thought you would as a comedian and writer. So, I felt confident that I understood what he meant. He felt confident I understood what he meant. And so there is where we are.
When you guys change, okay, so you guys have updated the article on the debrief, right?
Yeah, I haven't looked at what he sent, but I got an email from Sonny saying, hey, saw the changes to the article and the nice comments, thank you, and all of that. So I don't know exactly what MJ put into it. At that point, it's like going back and looking at the mustache someone drew on my Mona Lisa, and I'm not going to read what changes were put in there. That's MJ's effing job. Let him earn his $3 a month. So.
I feel your pain on that one.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun one, but like I said, what are my options? My options are to either just pretend it didn't happen, or call, because I sensed it, man. Like I said, a week before this article came out, I wrote an article that was about the wisdom of Twitter, right? It said that dumb people, in short, that less intelligent people tend towards other media platforms, because on Twitter, it's an open community. And if you put some bullshit out there that's not true, that community will check you very quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that. Tim was you're letting these guys get in your head. And I didn't, that MJ, the first message from Sonny saying, they're all Monday morning quarterbacking you.
Right.
But I went, no, man, these are legit. Like, I was right.
Like, I need to be able to answer these questions. If they're coming at me, picking apart my article, I need to be able to answer these questions. I need clarity.
I want to know there's a real world. If I've screwed up and I have put out a wrong art, I mean, not only do I want to know, it's my job and I have a fiduciary responsibility, but I really was just like, man, did I really like misunderstand? Like, that email is that line in the lead of the article is so dispositive to me that I was like, I gotta go. Like, even MJ was like, damn, like, you know, I won't go into who, but other people at the company had the opportunity to read that story before it went out. We're like, holy effing, this will be a good one. Did we think it would explode? I don't know. You know, lots of times the debrief, unless it has UFO in the title, you don't know if it's going to do anything. So
I gotta tell you, Chris, it's tough to eat crow, and you do it very well. Like, you do it as best you can, man. Like,
right. What are you gonna do?
Man? Sometimes you put work out there, and you think you know you've double and triple checked it. Yeah. And then you overlook something and you're like, oh, the pit in your, I know the feeling in your stomach that you've probably had for the last few days.
Yeah, and he's not a buddy. Like, Sonny's not a guy who can get on the phone and go, hey, dude, man, like, do I really got, like, everything's these formal emails back and forth.
Right.
So there was this long process of that. And throughout there, he did every version. I even told MJ, I was talking to my wife about it, you know, because she's stuck in this house with me. And I told her, I said, like, I'm good at finding where I could have done something different. And I guess I could have gone to physics, like gotten a PhD in physics and known that analog was a term. But other than that, like, yeah, I did what I could do.
I'll be honest, just based off what you told me and the fact that it took him 3 emails to clarify it for you is what concerns me a little bit. That's just my gut reaction. It was just like, man, why would you take this many emails to answer the question? Like, that first response, I'm like, oh, he's dodging the question. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like he was dodging the question in that first response. And he was just like Teddy Roosevelt and this, like, I'm just like, what? Like, why couldn't you just put what you put in the third email in the first one? Man,
you know,
I feel for you, man.
Way back when I congratulated you on an analog, why not in that email say something about theory or something about math or a metric? But, you know, again, he sent me everything, sends me all the paper, all the images. He has to assume that I read the paper and understand it too, you know, and I did. That's what I said. When I saw it all in August, I went, yeah, it's theory. I was right there with everyone else. I was like, I didn't jump on it. So when I asked, and he's like, no, it's not an analog, man. It's a real warp bubble. It's tiny. And in his mind, he's answering honestly, like, what we've proposed here is a real warp bubble. If he would have used the word proposed or theory or anything,
predicted.
I would have been.
I don't know how you leave that word out.
Yeah,
I don't know how you leave that word out. Like, when you're talking about something that significant, that word, like, proposed, supposed, theoretical,
well, in all the research,
you know, in all practical terms, like, all of those words should have been thrown in there. And it sucks because, yeah, I mean, your hands are not the only hands that this passed through. You're not the only check system, you know. It went through some other hands and everybody sort of missed this. And that happens. And guess what? Also, that's science, you know, like open sourcing the data, letting people go at it and murder board it and go, wait a second, something's wrong here. It's not right. And it's funny because when I saw that all of the responses, I'm like, oh no, I hope this is right. I hope this is right.
Up, right.
You know, yeah, no, yeah. Dude, absolutely.
From Sunday when we talked about it to actually having you on the show and then seeing the blowback on Twitter, I was like, and I intentionally waited a day or two to reach out to you because I knew you were feeling some heat, and I was like, I really want to know what's going on here. And when you said that you wanted to come on and you still wanted to come on and you still wanted to explain exactly what happened. And I think, there's nothing you can do. There are going to be people who are never going to go to the debrief again because of this. But
for sure. And
there are
I'm
also
sure
going to
I
be
dropped- I
people.
just dropped
There are
100
also
Twitter
going to be
followers, too.
there are also going to be people who are going to respect the shit out of you, Chris, because you missed this. You came back, you ate that crow, and you guys updated the article. And you're not going to get credit for that publicly, but there will be people who will appreciate it and who will respect you and who will respect the publication because of it, because you came back and you corrected the article and you're correcting it right here in real time. And I really appreciate that.
Well, everything I told you guys, when this all came down, when that final, he says, well, it's a matter of semantics email. And he lays out that, yeah, I got it wrong. That happened, was that Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday night. And that's when I told my wife, everything I told you guys, I wanted to go on and write a retraction. I wanted to go on the debrief and tell that story and say, hey, this is how a mistake is made by me. This is how I was confident in the questions I asked, confident in his answers. Like I said, even follow-up questions that would generally support it about what kind of materials were used. Was this done in your lab or another lab? Things like that. I felt I was having one conversation. He felt he was having another one. And I really wanted to put that out. And so I contacted MJ and he very politely said, that's not your prerogative, nor is that your job. This is my job. So I think a big part of me wanting to come on here today is just explain to people, because the 1,000 or so people on Twitter that follow me, whatever they want to say about me, again, I tell people all the time, if you spend your whole life obese and you've spent enough time on stage as a comedian, what strangers think about you doesn't matter. But there are people in my life, like you guys and other people that I've gotten to know, that are counting on the work I'm doing to be accurate. And I said, I think I need to take them through this so they know, I haven't slept in 2 days. I offered my resignation. We went through all of that. And, wow. They docked my pay $1.
From the $2 a week you're making.
That's right. Which I was going to say is 50% of my pay. So we have,
which cracks me up. It also cracks me up, because there are people that will say, well, the article already got the clicks and this already happened and they already made all this money. It's like, if you think the debrief is making money on Orifice, you've lost your mind.
On one article, how much money can you make on one article? I mean, if it had 100 million views, it'd be like 20 grand. It's just not a lot of money to be made on a single article.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And if anything,
good luck convincing anyone of that.
Raising the profile of the debrief with what turns out to be an inaccurate story is by no means a great long-term business plan.
Right.
So I don't think there's any, other than the fact that I'm excited about what he's accomplished, and it would have made for a great story that, hey, here's the blueprints. We can now test a warp drive and create a warp bubble in the lab. That's a great story.
Right. Yeah.
Having done that is the story I put out, which is a history-making story. And unfortunately, history has not been made.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one thing that you tapped on I found interesting was that he's a scientist that has very outside of the box thinking, because he is hired by DARPA. He is hired by these companies that want that outside of the box thinking because they're trying to develop some really wild stuff. So I can understand from his point of view the frustration when because he's also caught in heat for apparently making claims about physics violating engines.
So again, that's the M drive, Robert Schwartz's M drive. There is a standing argument on whether or not that violates physics, which Luis brings us perfectly to the second controversy around this story. Is the controversy brought up by Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff and others
Oh yeah, let's get into that. But before we do that, let's get I'm excited because we've got Mark Sokol and Jeremiah Popp coming on at the top of the hour, as well as Bradley Vorhees. And I know you got to get out of here pretty soon, Chris. But we also have our other co-host who's had something else come up today, but he's joining us now, ladies and gentlemen. Rather be squidding.
Squid.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
What's going on, brother?
What's going
Not
on?
too much. Yeah, sorry I couldn't make the first half hour, but I think it's still a great story. It really is. It's interesting.
Whatever.
So let's hit the other I know you only got 20 minutes left, Chris. Let's hit the other controversy. So you've got guys like Hal Puthoff coming out saying that this is, or no, sorry, was it Eric Davis or Hal Puthoff?
So I got a DM from a guy on Twitter who's the guy who posted that note from Eric Davis, and he sent that note to me before it went up on Twitter, and I basically told him, hey, when it gets down to whether the physics is valid, when it gets down to like whether this will really manifest a work bubble or all that, my job is to go with my sources and the people I trust. And I have no experience with Eric Davis, but I can tell you that one of the people that looked at it for me is his boss, or was his boss for a long period of time, and is somebody who I have another story coming out on very soon. So in this world of alternative propulsion, after I wrote about the third story of this type, I sent MJ a text and I said, MJ, the title of every article I write from now on will be this. Researcher says mainstream physics is wrong and he's right, and this is why. This is everybody in this field, from Robert Schwer with his M drive to Eric Davis. Eric Davis has a solution for the Tic Tac that involves M theory. First of all, M theory is like the wacky version of string theory that has no verifiable proof in the lab behind it, and it involves pulling power from other dimensions that we don't even know if so again, here's the bottom line. When you get that deep into the physics, to me, it's just a matter of faith. You just have to trust who you trust, unless you really are trained in it, unless you really are a physicist who knows this stuff.
Well, and that, right.
You just have to go, who do I trust? Whose career and whose peers are respecting their work and validating their work.
Well, and this is why
Chris was peer reviewed.
Right. Understood. And this is why I trust no one in anything ever. Right? But that being said, like at the end of the day, and I think somebody mentioned this comments too, the proof's in the pudding, right? So eventually as people are working out these technologies and working out this science, there will be verifiable results. But until we can actually see those results, none of it matters to us, the layman. Who it matters to are other interested engineers who are trying to take theoretical physics and turn it into reality. Again, like we've got, Mark Sokol and Jeremiah Popp who are coming on later, and folks like that who are literally trying to take these theories. The problem is they can get led down the wrong rabbit hole very quickly.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there. For the layman, for those of us who are actually interested in seeing what this science can provide when it comes to engineering technology, I mean, was anybody really like putting their full faith in one particular physicist? I mean, I respect the ideas and I respect the article, but like, I was never like, oh, warp drives just down the pike. Thank you so much, Chris Plain. You did it. Like, who's putting that level of faith?
I do think you're on a key point there, Mike, though. I do think the key point of this is, up until now, we've had theories, and the conclusion of the article, and as I said, even Sonny said, hey, I thought all of my quotes in the article made it clear anyway, right? That was his opinion. And his closing quotes were basically, this is a starting point for practical tests, for people that are saying, how do we build something in the lab to try?
Which is cool, right?
How do I make this test? So Mark Sokol may not have the equipment that Sonny mentioned in the article that he would use, but he said the exact type of like 3D printer he would use. He said the material he would use to print that 1 micron sphere and 4 micron rod or whatever it was. I forget the exact measurements, and build that little teeny tiny warp craft. That barrier seems to be new. That fact that someone goes, here's
which
a
is
testable,
cool,
buildable thing,
right?
But my reporting that it has been built was not right.
Right. So I guess my question, and I'm going to push back a little bit on the debrief here. I love you guys to death, but why does the article still say DARPA funded researcher accidentally discover the world's first warp bubble?
Because that's what Sonny's claim is, that we have discovered it, that we're seeing this warp bubble in Casimir cavities, and
predicted
in our
though,
formula,
but it's predicted, right?
Yep.
So would it be DARPA funded researcher accidentally discovers prediction?
Have they made that Casimir cavity? Have they actually made that, plates together with that little tiny rod in between? Like, is that physically created or not, I guess?
No. That is the key of the controversy here, rather, is that the proposed structure that Sonny said, if I built it, I would use this printer and this material, and it'll make a little tiny warp bubble. That proposed structure has been built by nobody.
So we have a potential blueprint, essentially.
Yes.
Right.
That's what he said. Yeah. Were you here for the first 40 minutes, Squid? Did you miss all that?
I missed all that. Yeah. Could you repeat it all for me?
I kind of explained that.
But so then it hasn't been discovered.
We are
really.
in a new place, but we are not where I reported we were.
Got it. So, but that is interesting. I mean, there's an interesting new model for other engineers to now take, and I'm so excited to hear, and I'm sure, and this can lead you further down this rabbit hole too, into other engineers who can now utilize this research to see what else is possible. And let me ask you this: so, is Sonny White now looking to start building start engineering this? Or
so that is actually in the article as well, Michael. I don't think that part's been taken out. But he told me there are no current plans for us to build it. He described, as I said, the material he would use if he did build it. And he reiterated that he was laser focused on the custom Casimir cavity research for DARPA. Now, let me clarify something here. When you're using money from somebody and you're doing research, and you stumble upon something that has nothing to do with what you're doing for them, the fact that DARPA let him publish that they let him do this paper on this proposed warp structure is unusual in my experience in reporting on this. So I think Sonny was covering himself with me. Now, this is my opinion. Just letting me know and hoping I would put in the article and letting DARPA know, hey, we're not taking this exciting result, shutting down what we're doing for you, and zooming off and building this thing. Now, here's what's really interesting, and I think this is going to come about in the spring. So this is what to look for. At Limitless Space, where Sonny works, two different things happen. One, he gets grants from DARPA and places like that, and he does these research for them. The other thing is they give out grants. Last year, they gave out 9 grants, over $1 million, to a number of researchers. I've written about a couple of them, including one with pulsed fusion, one who's working on traversable wormholes, all of these sort of theoretical things. So when Sonny was tight-lipped with me on when his DARPA contract ends and when he would be looking at other things, but he's in the unique position to fund this research himself if he wanted to. It is my belief that he will shop this. And again, this is me conjecturing based on, my type of work I do here, that he will shop this, and that sometime, by the time they're announcing their next round of what they call the I² grants initiative, when they announce that next round next year, which I'll be reporting on, I think either he will have found someone to fund it so they can go ahead and build the thing and test the thing, or I wouldn't be surprised if his own team is one of their own grants in the next round to go after this thing. Because if you're Sonny White and you're confident that this is real and that if you build this little sucker, it'll make a little warp bubble, man, you better find a way to build it. That's all I got to tell you, because I'm going to be there to report on it, and it's either going to work or not going to work. But that's what I believe is going to happen. I believe in 2022 we'll see this thing built, and then we'll know if Eric Davis and these other guys are right, or if Sonny and the people that peer reviewed his paper and the scientists that looked at it for me are right, and the thing is really going to create a little tiny weeny little warp bubble.
It's fascinating. We're on. I think you and I, Chris, are on the same email chain. Jack Sarfatti.
Right?
Sarfatti usually shits on everyone, but he actually said he was actually interested in Sonny's findings, saying it could fit in with his findings.
You know, there is some interesting overlap. It's funny you and I talked about this, Mike. I spoke to Jack at a convention months back, and I recommended him to you as a guest, and he came on. He was a home run guest for you, and. I wrote about.
If you haven't seen the Jack Sarfatti interview on the Singularity Lab, make sure you go back and watch that interview.
I'm going to take you right into your second half.
He shit on me and you for like an hour straight. It was great.
He has shit on me in that email chain since that day. This is fantastic. I love it. I will not block it. I will not remove that email chain. I will not ask to be off of it. I need to be. I've seen people jump on it. Trust me. I've seen I don't know people, but you've seen them, right? Like high-profile people go and take me off this email.
Super high-profile people with like names that you hear every single day in this community, going, "Get me off of this email chain."
Yeah. So this will lead me perfectly. This will lead you perfectly to the second half of your show, Mike.
Okay.
So I met Jack Sarfatti at this event. At the APEC conference, the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference, founded by Mark Sokol and Jeremiah Popp, your two next guests. And I wrote about the conference, and I interviewed Tim Ventura, the guy who hosts and runs it. I had multiple interviews with Mark. I had interviewed Mark for a previous piece. I wrote about him. I have another story coming about him and UFOs coming up very soon. So I wrote about this whole conference, and man, like everybody at that conference is like, wow, you really captured it. And it was titled the world's most exclusive anti-gravity club, because they have all these people from NASA and DARPA and all these amazing resumes in this group. And so I name all these researchers. I have all these quotes. What happens the next day? I'm on this email chain all of a sudden, an email chain I've never joined. And Jack Sarfatti is just blasting me for not including him in the article. Because quite frankly, Chris, of all the people that are at that conference, Jack Sarfatti, am the most important one. And then I had the nerve to say that Mark Sokol looked like Doc Brown from Back to the Future.
And not say that he was the inspiration for Doc Brown. And he hated your picture that you put on the debrief. He's like, it shows that horrible picture of me.
Exactly. So yeah. So here's what's great though. So again, you have mainstream science. You have people that would never touch this stuff. You have the very fringe guys who are going out there building labs and trying it, like Mark Sokol. And in this foam in the middle, you have guys like Sarfatti who have real resumes and work for the CIA, have worked for these really government-funded programs. Guys like Jack.
Allegedly.
That's where I report. I'm in here with these maniacs all day, every day, and I love it. But sometimes I'm going to write about an anti-gravity club, and Jack Sarfatti's going to hate me. And sometimes I'm going to write about Sonny White, and the world's going to go, dude, it's not a warp bubble. He didn't make it. So this is that crazy foam I live in. But I got to tell you, these guys you have coming up, this is as good a guess as you're going to have. Mark is fantastic. And I haven't had a chance to get to know Jeremiah a lot. But Mark's the real deal. He's the guy who has built the lab, has been funded, has been able to quit his jobs, and is in there testing anti-gravity experiments, testing things, trying to build anti-gravity craft in his lab. So you guys are in for a treat with that character.
Whew, or did you just outro yourself? What was that?
Yeah, you still got 5 minutes.
No, I get so.
What else are you gonna filibuster?
I can't leave early. I can't. I've been working all week. I can't leave 5 minutes, Louis.
You can leave 5 minutes.
You
You know what you could do? You know what you could do from all the followers you've lost due to this article? We could try to get some back for you if you want to tell people whether they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yes, you can follow me at Jazz Shaw. That's where Somewhere in the Skies is my podcast. I do that with Ryan Sprague. And you can follow me on Alien Girl 111. It's at _fiction. It's because I write fiction, not at the Debrief. Jack Sarfatti with your clever jokes in my email. I love you, Billy. It's because I write books. And if you want to read a fantasy novel and you got 99 cents, bump on over there. You'll have a good time.
That's fantastic. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking this opportunity to fall on your sword and clarify. I mean, that's all we're doing here. We're clarifying.
Science is about facts, Michael. Science is about getting it right. If I'm going to report on science and I get something wrong, it doesn't do anybody any good if I don't come in here and say I misunderstood. With that being said, don't be surprised if that thing gets built in the next year.
Well, that's another warp bubble teaser. You sure you want to go with that?
By the way, the last piece I'll tell you is the fallout from this is they had to dig through all my old stories and fact check them all. So the one Doc Brown invents time machine, turns out that story was not true. The one Chris voted sexiest man in America, turns out that one was not true. Mike Mataloni really wears a skull cap, has a full head of hair underneath. Also not true. So while I'm outing myself, there were a few other articles they found that were in that. I had a whole list of jokes, but I said after about 3
you're a gem of a man, dude, and I think more reporters should take after your example. It's going to hurt at first, but I think it's going to win you a lot of points down the road because people know that at least going forward, you're not probably going to quadruple check everything.
There's a scene in the movie The World According to Garp where the airplane crashes into the house and Robin Williams turns the realtor and he says, "We'll take it." His wife goes, "What?" And he goes, "Honey, what are the odds of a plane hitting a house twice? This house is now plane proof." So the Debrief is now plane proof.
There you go. Dude, listen. This is a hard, very complicated subject. Very complicated. The physics of it, I've barely grasped it, So I think it's okay to get something wrong on a complicated issue like this every once in a while. It's going to happen.
Just don't ever do it again.
Just don't you ever.
Hey, here's your choice, guys. You can have a square-ass, boring-ass, regular old scientist writing for the Debrief, and God knows we get those resumes. And you should read the copy. Or you can have old Uncle Chris over there trying to be fun and real and tell you what he thinks is going on. And I seem to get a good response from my readers.
Yeah, and I have a hard time believing that any of those resumes would have come on this show and rectified a mistake like this. So appreciate it, Chris.
Hopefully, that is one of the relieving things about talking to scientists all day. A good portion of them still have that humble attitude. Is I'd rather get it right than be right. And so as a reporter, I try and carry that with me.
Yeah, keep rocking the beat, Chris. We appreciate it. We appreciate the work you're doing over at the Debrief, and we need to keep pushing it because this is all fascinating stuff. Thank you, brother.
Amen.
Ciao.
Woo!
Look, dude, can I be 100% honest with you? I didn't think that was going to happen today.
No,
I didn't know there was a correction. I had a very busy day today, but I didn't know that this. I thought he was coming on the show to be like, no, here are the facts. Because even Rather, we talked about this after the show yesterday, Rather and I said to Rather, I'm like, how could he get that wrong? Like, how could he not understand the difference between a proposed warp bubble versus a real warp bubble? And I'll be honest with you, it sounds like that guy misled him big time.
Yeah, like, I blame White.
I really do, because how could you not clarify that? Like he said it so definitively, and if he's got an email, which is what he said, he's got an email him being that definitive.
Chris sent me the emails in case he's executed, so I've got a copy. If anything happens to Chris Plain, I've got the emails.
Well, White is no stranger to controversy either. He kind of did this exact same thing with the M drive. When it was even a little bit worse back then, is because the experiments he did were kind of obviously had problems with it, were problematic, and he did these problematic experiments and claimed these incredible results that weren't true. So he kind of has a history of misleading the scientific community.
Well, hopefully this is something that is predictive and can be built upon. We got a couple of great guests come on here in a second to help us with that. But let's hit this. Thank you so much, Grant Levac, $30 donation. Love me some controversy. Sarfatti shitting and Doc Brown on TSL. Keep up the great work and guest gang. P.S. Not that you're hard up, Madeline, but here's a little quiche. To help with the upcoming move and keep the caffeine on tap. Bless you, Grant, and thank you so much for all you do for the show, promoting the show, and keeping us alive and well on Twitter. Alicia Carey Wyatt says, I'm confused what everybody's so worked up about. Science uses concepts and theoretical ideas, or am I wrong? Run a simulation, scientists say. This is our best grasp. Anyone with a brain shouldn't have picked up an analog. Fair enough. Right on. Why don't we get to our next Scio Apocalypse with the $1.69 donation. Thank you for keeping it light. There was also a
super sticker way earlier.
James
I'll find it.
Doyle, you forgot your tie squid.
Sorry, Doyle.
What is going on?
I was in such a rush to catch Chris. I forgot my tie.
That's all right. Worries, brother. All right, so fantastic show.
You also had this one here, Robert McGowan or McEwen.
Robert McGowan.
Oh, no, McEwen. McEwen. Yeah.
Intense. All right, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we got another amazing guest for you. Mark Sokol is an independent researcher and founder of Falcon Space, a self-funded effort to recreate a variety of breakthrough propulsion experiments focused on scientific accuracy and reproducibility. Mark, how are you?
Hey, that was amazing so far. I'm very proud of Chris for getting in front of it. And I gotta say to Chris, getting bashed by Jack Sarfatti on a public email list, it's like a rite of passage.
It's almost like getting roasted by Don Rickles.
Jeremiah will tell you about another roasting that he like snuck in a little comment and got Jack riled up once. With the magic goo. We'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, I can't wait.
Oh, boy. Here we go. V.A.G.E, magic goo. This is going to be this is going
to be an epic second hour here.
A very dirty physics hour.
Yeah.
But I would say this, though.
Yeah.
Even if Sonny hasn't made a warp drive, there is a company that has. That's Quantum Electrodynamics. They call themselves Warp Drive Dynamics. The guy's name is David Perez out of Omaha, Nebraska. And he was using fractal antennas. He's still doing it till this day. And by creating an interference pattern between these different antennas, when they're in perfect resonance, it creates a distortion in space-time that's like pulling objects in. And they actually achieved 0.75 meters per second squared. So that's a couple pounds. It depends on how much the mass of objects are, but it's an attractive engine, and you can actually go to his garage and see it.
And this is reproducible. This is something that's been
proven.
Wow.
Yes, he has lots of videos on it. There's not that much movement when he turns it on because the engine is it's attached with very thick cables, so you're seeing objects getting attracted to it. But really, most of the thrust, it's not really thrust, is of the engine trying to pull toward other objects. Sort of like artificial gravity.
Has he published peer review papers? Awesome.
Yeah, they wouldn't accept it as warp drive, so he had to change the name to VEM, or variable electromagnetic drive. So he doesn't call it a warp drive, but that's what it is.
Right. Well,
and
we actually had to get him on the show as well. Let's go ahead and introduce real quick. I keep wanting to call you Falcon because it's on his face. Real quick, Mark. We got Jeremiah Popp joining us right now, aka Jeremiah Exotic, independent investigator, researcher, and experimenter focused on breakthrough propulsion technologies and gravity modification. Welcome, Jeremiah. Oh, you're muted, brother. And still muted. While you're muted, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next guest. Bradley Vorhees is a self-proclaimed madman and creator of the V.A.G.E. Ladies and gentlemen, author of Sonic Gravity, creator of the V.A.G.E. Welcome, Bradley Vorhees.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Look, killer new background there you got going on.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, just thought I'd kind of pro up like all you guys.
Amazing. Did we get a vocal on Jeremiah yet?
All right, guys, got my mic set up.
There you go.
We should be good to go.
Excellent. All right, so we've already spoken with Chris. He ate some crow. He fell on his sword. It's not going to be good enough for everybody, but I think most of the folks recognize that he had an error. We have not created the world's first warp bubble when it comes to Sonny White. It is a predictive model. Is there anything further you guys want to drop in here when it comes to this article? Any more context, or because I know everyone's been dealing with the fallout from this for like 2 days, 3 days. So you guys have any thoughts? We'll start with you, Mark.
I think you guys pretty much covered all my thoughts already, and I love the way Chris came and got ahead of it. And
what did you think about the science of it when you first read the article?
What
was your thoughts on it? Were you like, I think this is wrong?
I was kind of confused. How in the world is he sticking a probe inside of a Casimir cavity in order to detect a warp bubble? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. What did that probe look like? Who made the probe? Like, it didn't make any sense. And then we started tearing it apart. It was Jeremiah and Todd DeCiato were just tearing it apart and reading the paper, and then they realized, this was a simulation. It wasn't an actual build that he built, but it's a prediction.
Got it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a question for you two at Falcon Space. Do you do any research into Casimir cavities and the negative energy stuff? Is that anything you've looked into?
Yeah, actually, I have something right behind me over here. This fractal antenna contraption that I have over here, it's supposed to create some sort of warp bubble by using two standing waves interacting with each other. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get the amplifier to run right now, the RF amplifier that's supposed to be powering it. We're not doing anything with Casimir cavities. Basically, for anyone who doesn't understand, the Casimir effect is when you have two plates, objects very close to each other. They suddenly have this like attractive effect. So they're not touching. It could be inside of a vacuum too. No, this is not electrostatics. This is not magnetic. They're attracted to each other, and that effect is explained by the removal of the energy that permeates space-time not being able to get in there, and the energy that's on the outside pushing everything together. Sort of like a pressure that pushes on everything and just can't get into that tiny little cavity. Jeremiah, did I explain that right?
Yeah, as far as Casimir goes, there's definitely there are fine structure constants that we can take advantage of that we can't really take advantage of on a large scale, but yeah, that's pretty accurate. So I do have some videos if you guys want to pull up the other screen just as a sidebar while everybody else talks. I can go through some pictures. I have a screen here.
What do you got? Oh, this is cool.
So I took a look at Sonny's paper, read through the entire thing, and I wanted to see, were there actual ways that we could try to simulate the real-world environment scenarios in which we could create these kinds of Z-pinch effects around conductive cylinders between Casimir plates if we injected or superimposed a large-scale field. So instead of using the vacuum and its native properties, we just added our own properties by cramming RF waves into a vacuum environment in which we used an ionized gas to demonstrate the flux density of all the pinch fields. So let me just go ahead and scroll through some of these. See if so if we take a look at Sony's little layout here, and we have a sphere between basically the sphere. He's showing the cylinder walls. We're looking at this from the top down. We see one ring here, but this is actually representative of two individual cylinders that are, or two individual rings that are taking place inside of this ring. So I do have that in video. Let me just go ahead and pull that video up, and we can actually take a look at it. And let's see, here we go.
So, okay, break this down for us again. What are we looking at here?
So in vacuum, this is the layout of a sphere between two round electromagnetic current-carrying conductors. And what we're looking for here is whether or not the flux density is being pinched around the sphere or if it's diverting around the sphere and ignoring it. And so in this situation, we can see that we do have several pinch points. What's that?
And that tells us what?
It's just to see whether or not his simulation, whether Sony's simulation was close to accurate. He also shows us around
how big is
a half sphere. This is about approximately 7/8 of an inch from here to here on my arrow. So this is a fairly large.
This is in your second bedroom laboratory, right?
Yeah. So we can actually see some of the fields starting to look almost exactly like what's shown in the paper here, which is pretty darn interesting. So at least the plasma simulations seem to be working out well. So what Sony thought was interesting is that if you take a look at the closest point between where that arc, that curved part is, and where that flat plate is, you'd expect all the electric current, all the field density to be between those 2 points. But what was interesting is that it spread out and extended beyond that point, and even more so, it actually went through the metal plate and extended as an evanescent wave on the other side of the plate, showing that the fields were perturbating that space. And so this real-world plasma simulation shows that there's actually a possibility for these physics models on the computer to be realized. Plasma is a great analog for the vacuum.
I was under the assumption that, the Casimir cavities had to be, many magnitudes smaller than, inch scale.
They do. Exactly.
So is there any Casimir activity that's happening in here?
No. In this place, we don't have any natural Casimir activity, because natural Casimir activity takes place with wavelengths that are so incredibly short they don't even, take up the space between an electron and a proton. In some of the waves, they're as small as a proton themselves are smaller. So we can't actually generate those kinds of waves, and we don't have the ability here to print those kinds of structures. But what we can do is synthesize longer wavelengths and fill the space with those longer wavelengths with, say, the output of a Tesla coil. Where Sony mentions in his little video, about 14-minute segment, that in his discovery, it supports the vacuum, allowing longitudinal modes of transmission. So that's precisely what we did, is inject longitudinal modes of electromagnetic radiation into the zone in order to affect the local matter that was inside that zone and see if it indeed acted the way that it predicted. And it turns out that it did seem to act the way that it predicted. So far, so good.
So this is on a more of a macro scale, and then you're seeing it on a macro, and you think that this could be translated to micro, which would actually point to Sonny being on the right track when it comes to this, yeah?
Yeah, it really does appear so. I mean, the evanescent
That's
field
fascinating.
definitely extends beyond where we expect.
Is this something? Hold on one second. Let me just thank you so much, NeuroStream, for the $49.99 super sticker. You really support the show. Thank you so much, brother. We appreciate that, NeuroStream. Let me ask you this. So is this something you would have thought of prior to this article or this coming out from Sonny? Is this something that you guys had thought about before, or were you like, oh, this is interesting?
It's not all that different in terms of its shape and geometry than the antenna system that Mark and I have been working on for the last several months before the article came out. And we were actually ignorant that he had produced the paper almost 6 months ago. We didn't even realize it was released. In fact, it wasn't a big deal until finally, I guess, he had gotten some more results. And that's when he finally made a point to notify you guys that the Debrief article happened. So, but no, we wouldn't have thought of that exact geometry. We're trying something very different. Okay. We're not trying to create a symmetrical warp bubble. What we're trying to do is just physically control a local volume of space and squeeze it in as much as we possibly can, then sending a laser beam through that and verifying that the actual path length, the time it takes for the beam to pass through empty space, takes longer than it should, showing we slow down time.
That's what everyone was referring to as the stress energy tensor. So think of it as like a wave going through water. Really what's traveling through the water is a pressure gradient. So when you have an electromagnetic wave, it's the same thing. It's a pressure gradient of space-time, because space-time is the carrier of the electromagnetic wave. But so that those are moving at the speed of light. But if you can ever trap an electromagnetic wave in that the wavelength and the antenna length are exactly the same, then the wave would keep on repeating in that same spot. And if you get another wave coming off of another antenna below it, they'll both cancel each other out in this spot over here, and you'll be forcing energy into space-time. That's what we call the stress energy tensor. Technically, it should change the mu and epsilon, which is the permittivity and permeability of space-time. So like a laser light will slow down. There'll be a lensing effect that we see around some flying saucers. And that should create, sort of a warp bubble, a warping effect of space-time. And this is what quantum electrodynamics, or the QED, David Perez has been doing in Omaha, Nebraska in his garage for the past couple of years. He's doing it on a much lower scale, like in the realm of hundreds of watts. And he's seen some pretty convincing effects. And we're actually in talks with him. He was on APEC about a month or two ago, and he showed some of his latest work. So,
Mark, is there any interest outside of his garage? Like, I mean, if he's doing these kinds of experiments and getting these kind of results, I would imagine people are knocking down his door to develop that technology.
Funny you should say that.
Okay.
Strangely enough, he has had a couple offers, but nobody's approached him with enough money to actually, take it long term. He's also an older person. He's a physics college professor, so he's like a tenured professor. So this guy knows his shit, and he teaches at 5 different colleges right now. And he just went through cataract eye surgery on both eyes. So he's out of commission right now. You might be able to get him because he's in recovery.
This is Perez.
David Perez. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the dude you mentioned yesterday, right? I want to get him on the lab. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's an older folk as well. So there may be some concern with that, with investing in such a venture. But he does have many of his students from college who've joined him and helped him out over there, and he's mostly concentrated on the amplification side of these engines, because the antenna side is they're very simple. They're just pieces of copper. But the amplifiers and the tuners, and this is stuff that me and Jeremiah are getting very intimate with right now. That is where the real struggle is, and that's the part that he thinks he has figured out.
Got it. Let's turn it over to Bradley Vorhees. First of all, Bradley, it's been way too long since we've hung out.
Yeah, I know. Hey, pretty good. How are you?
Good. You want to update us on how the V.A.G.E is coming, or maybe real quick, let people know what you're working on.
I wanted to know what he thought about the warp bubble story.
Yes, we need.
Well,
both.
Okay. So Chris, I think he's a journalist. So his shtick isn't like the physics or anything like that. So I think he's doing his best to report what he did. And he found out that something was fucked up, and then he issued the correction. And I don't think, he's got journalistic integrity. He pulled it back and said, hey, I think he said I got it wrong to save face for the dude he interviewed, because I don't think he got it wrong. I think if somebody tells him something, he's going to get it right. He's going to repeat what they said. So, I think he's cool for probably taking the heat for, that other scientist who, whatever, he was interviewing. So I don't know. He has my respect. I'm not pissed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he's a good dude.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So
Alicia Carey White says, I want to know whose V.A.G.E he's working on. What is V.A.G.E stand for again?
It's the Voorhees anti-gravity engine.
Voorhees,
and so
okay.
the
His last name is Voorhees.
Voorhees, yeah.
It took me a while to figure that out. I thought, like, is Voorhees like some sort of like circular motion of electrons or something? And then it was only like the second time he came down to the lab that I made the connection.
Okay, you guys must think I'm pervert then. But yeah, anyway.
Come on, we knew you were pervert. That was not.
Yeah, so. But I think, so you know, the stuff that these guys are talking about is kind of pretty out there, and you know, I only sort of taught myself that which I needed to do what I thought I needed to do, and so I'm not really qualified to, you know, talk about like plasma and all that shit. But I can tell you what Casimir effect is. If you take two magnets and you squish them together, there's a magnetic field and they're going to kind of marry up really tight. And there's a magnetic field that doesn't allow electrons to get into between those plates. And so that's why it's really hard if you stick two magnets together. You know how it's like really hard to pull them apart? That's why, is because there's Casimir effect where the magnetic connection there prevents electrons from getting in there. Or that is, don't shake your head. That's exactly what it is. As far as
it's not, though.
It's
I'm
not.
sorry.
No.
Wait. There's
well, that is what the Casimir effect is. It prevents, at least in that scenario,
it's virtual particles, right? And it's not necessarily magnets. It's just metal plates that are, you know, together.
Yeah. Well, I'm just telling you what an application of it is. Like, it could be you know, in your application for it, it might be different. It might be plates of, I don't know, whatever. But what holds, like, say, you know, the mall doors, you know how they have those two magnets that hold them together, that kind of thing? Well, that is an example of the Casimir effect, and that's a fact.
No, it's not.
What's that?
No, it's not.
Okay, dude, I'll send you YouTube.
So
I'll send you a
but
YouTube
wait.
Let's a scientific paper.
Okay, wait. No need for
I'm just telling you
offended. Let's just why would you disagree with that, or why would you say that's not an example of it, Mark?
That's a magnetic. That's magnetic attraction, which is way stronger, thousands of times or magnitude stronger than the Casimir effect. Casimir effect is only detectable when you have two materials that have no reason to attract or repel each other, and you put them really close to each other, and they expel all the radiation that makes up space-time gets expelled from that, and then there's only pressure on the outside, and they get pressed together. But they have to be really, really close, and you could suck out all the air. You know, you could have a short between them, so there's no static electricity or anything, and it'll still attract. But it's very, very weak. It's not.
Okay. Well, I'll just send you some, so we don't need to argue about it. But
if you do have two magnets like tight next to each other, there is a tiny, tiny bit of attraction there from the Casimir effect, but magnitude's less than the magnetic attraction.
I'm just telling you that's an effect. So, and in fact, what I talk about in quantum propulsion uses the Casimir effect it's actually 0-point energy. And so the way it works is, and we can talk about it, we've already kind of covered it, but when we create an electromagnetic field that is harmonic, that resonates with the Higgs field, then the idea behind the V.A.G.E is we actually, within this field, we essentially bump the Higgs boson, the Higgs string, we achieve resonance with it, and we essentially decouple whatever is inside that field from the Higgs field, which makes it massless. And when that happens, the Higgs field breaks the symmetry of the weak nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force is what tries to push stuff together, tries to smear everything out. And so when you, like, say you stick a suction cup to a window and you pull on it, the weak nuclear force is trying to push air and what have you underneath of the suction cup. And it's the pressure of the weak nuclear force that makes it so you can't pull that suction cup off, because the weak nuclear force abhors a vacuum and keeps it squished down. So when we create what I call the mass hole by bumping off all of, essentially the mass out of the field, it's a Casimir force. It's the weak nuclear force's attempt to push stuff into that field that you can use, and I talk about it in quantum propulsion, that you can use to essentially
Tom,
direct
I'm
your
going to come over
craft.
in a minute to show what you're working on, okay?
And so anyway, so what you do is it's called a quantum vacuum, right? And so if you say you shoot microwaves in a certain direction through the mass hole, like out the front, then you create differential pressure. Like in the front, the weak nuclear force will go, oh, there's something there. And so it won't push as hard on the front as it does on the back. And that's how you go forward using microwaves from inside an electromagnetic field that decouples the Higgs field. So, and I think, and I don't know for sure, but I was trying to put together what everybody was talking about when it comes to antennas and stuff like that. And I think that it's possible that the electromagnetic waves, from those antennas could interfere with the Higgs field the same way that the V.A.G.E does. And so that could create, in some ways, a small quantum vacuum. And I don't know if that's what they're talking about, but if that's not it, then I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't tried to learn that piece of it. So anyway, that's what. Does that make sense?
Ish. I mean, I don't know enough about physics to know my way around a fucking V.A.G.E hole. But I do know that you had something else that you wanted to share, and I do want to, Brad. I am definitely looking forward to your next experiment and when you're going to be doing that, and we'd love to get an update on that. But Mark, did you have something that you wanted to show us there in the lab?
Oh yeah, we're actually working on this gyroscope contraption. And Tom Butler over here is one of the assistants is putting it all together. And you can see Tom over here. We decided if we're making one, why not just make three? So each device has a gyroscope. These are little brass plugs. They're about 3 inches in diameter. There's a motor inside of it, and the stator is attached to this arm. And these are going to swing back and forth, sort of like oars in a boat. And according to Mike Gamble, if you move them forward slowly and pull them back fast, it should create a swimming motion through space-time. And I've been seeing a lot of variations of this, contraption using different types of mechanisms. We've seen Brian Sinclair's device, which sort of has like a hammer. I've seen another device that was recently emailed to me of working contraptions that use mechanical angular momentum and moving it to linear momentum. And they came out like really, really nice. These are we're using grease bearings. So there's a brass that we cut on the CNC machine. And these are the servos that we got. So they're going to attach directly to these arms, to the gyro arms, and that would allow us to control the entire device. And it's all going to be controlled by these little microcontrollers over here. And it'll all run on some sort of battery system. And we're expecting between 1 to 3 pounds of thrust in this configuration. That's from each unit. So that would be like 5 to 7 pounds altogether, something like that. And it should be really interesting.
So what's the ultimate goal of the device?
It's a proof of concept for these gyroscopes. I know Jeremiah really wants one of them for some other experiments.
That's because they're awesome, man. They are well-made little gadgets.
Yeah, there's nothing like this on the market that I could find. These little suckers can spin at 15,000 RPM, and just holding it in your hand, they're really, really well made. It's also going to be a stepping stone to a much larger version of the same device, which we all. Oops. Oh,
Your
my
headphone
just came off.
Okay. I thought that was something hit him.
No,
Holy
just the
moly.
wire got snagged. So this is for a 4-inch brass gyroscope. This thing weighs about like 2 pounds. And so this is going to be a really massive gyroscope when we finally get around to building these. So we're really excited about this project. I just wanted to finish it up for the weekend. And we're almost there. I mean, all the parts are created. It's just Legos at this point, screwing everything together.
Mark, what would be the dream application for that, for what you're working on?
CubeSats. You'd stick this in CubeSats. Nobody has ever achieved that, or at least that I know of, has ever achieved a thrust to weight ratio over like 15%. So
when you say
it's not
CubeSats, do you mean satellite systems?
Yeah, satellite
Okay.
systems. Such a system is on the International Space Station. And this is all according to Mike Gamble. I haven't been able to verify it. There are gyroscopes on the International Space Station. Whether they produce linear thrust or not, I haven't been able to verify. But he claims that it works, and then he worked on it for Boeing. So we're going to test it out, make sure that it works, and be able to provide these as a thrusting mechanism for small satellites. They're not too difficult to build, and we have all the machining capabilities here at the lab to make several of them. Also,
so are you looking to create this for commercial application, or like what is your application purpose?
proof of concept, really.
Okay.
And Tom Vallone ordered one already. He wants one for similar uses.
It's kind of the goal is like storing energy in the gyroscope and then translating that to thrust, or is there kind of something else to that?
Well, it's changing angular momentum to linear momentum, so non-Newtonian thrust. You're moving forward and nothing's going back.
So essentially, as those bearings are spinning, those flaps are going back and forth, and then that's what pushes the craft.
Yeah, it sort of like swims through space-time.
Interesting.
Sweet.
That's pretty wild.
Psypocalypse with a $2 donation is very sad to see Tom leave the scene. He was also asking for Tom's backstory.
Tom is a teacher. He does sports for high school, and after school he comes down to the lab and assists over here. He's been here for several months already.
Wow.
And he's just all into it. Like when there was a flood here at the lab, he was down here the entire time, helping clean up. Like he's put his heart and soul into this place, and we really like him.
Well, it's about that time of year again, Mark. Is the lab prepared for said flood?
Well, the time of year is actually passed already. It's
okay.
good. The fall that
I was thinking like melting snow.
No. It needs to rain like 3 inches within an hour.
Right.
But we want to get out of here. That's the goal.
Right on.
Fantastic. So what's next? What's next on your docket, Jeremiah? What are you working on now?
I have PNN's replication. So PNN is a French, it's an Italian replication of an idea that was verified by a French guy a long time ago. Without getting into the story too much, it's basically an electromagnetic antenna drive. It uses electromagnetic waves to put physical forces on space and time, which, because there is a limited propagation velocity of light, allows it to push against its own field, so it blows its own sail, in a manner of speaking. So that replication.
Can you bump up your mic a little bit? We're having a hard time.
Let me see. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, much better now.
Actually, let me check I'll check my mic, make sure my audio is set correctly. Maybe it's not using the correct mic. Let's see. Yeah, it should be good. For some reason, I guess it's having problems.
Now. Yeah, that's okay.
Excellent. Okay. So that replication, I've already tested it up to 36 watts, and I've had strange phenomena enough to the extent at 36 watts where I stopped. The entire right side of my body got a little bit disconnected by I guess I would say there was a numbing sensation, which would indicate normally microwave exposure, but I was using 2 different volts per meter indicators to measure the microwave field, and neither one was above the necessary safe threshold. So what that tells me is whatever I was exposed to from this antenna might not be electromagnetic in nature. So
is there any?
Of course, there's no radio elements in the system. There's nothing that could be producing alpha or beta emission. There's nothing that is operating at an incredibly short wavelength. So other than that, it's just standard electromagnetic inputs. It doesn't really make sense where it could be coming from, unless there was something else interesting going on, which we will be finding out soon with the laser interferometer. So that's one of 12 different projects.
Gotta get one of these.
Indeed, Mark. Yes, the lead vests are a great idea, just in case we do have ionizing radiation. I genuinely don't believe that's the phenomena that I was experiencing there, and I think the accelerometers will dovetail. I think
Well,
I
Mark's
may have
concerned for your safety.
Yeah, you got to cover
I'm
them
concerned
baby
for my
makers,
safety,
dude.
too. I was hit with microwave radiation once while running a test, and it felt like I had the flu for the next day.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me about that. You was it you or somebody was concerned that they got hit with some electromagnetic radiation, or was that you thought it was a pulse coming from somewhere? You thought somebody came up and like was attacking you. What was that? That was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was something else.
Ago?
That was over a year ago.
Okay.
Havana syndrome.
Right.
Yeah,
Getting cooked by a Russian microwave projector or something.
I got their license plate too. I should really send it to FBI.
Well, it's a year late, Mark. Jeez, better get on that, buddy. Somebody's smacking you with Havana syndrome.
Yeah, I don't think they were after me. They were after somebody else that was at the lab now who's had it before too.
Wow.
They had it with him. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're not coming back to the lab anytime soon. So.
Awesome. So you said you wanted to get this gadget set up before the weekend. Is this time sensitive for something, or what do you
we have APEC this weekend, so I like to have something to show every weekend, every time there's an APEC show, and it's something we've been working on for a while, and I finally dialed in the CNC machine so we could just literally plop a chunk of metal in, push a button, and it runs and produces a whole bunch of parts for us. So that's been really nice. Get it to that point.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing. Anything? So we're kind of on this whole. We've been following Chris Plain down the rabbit hole, as it were, when it comes to following the engineering focus on warp drive technology. Is there anybody in the field who we should be keeping our eye on right now? Obviously, besides you guys. Any theories, any ideas that you see bubbling up that are interesting, or that you see unique theories that you think could be engineered into something interesting?
Definitely take a look at David Perez, PNN, like Jeremiah mentioned, both very similar concepts, looking at it from different approaches.
PNN, which one is that?
It's an Italian company, so the translation is, they call it the Italian engine, but it's an abbreviation of something in Italian, so I'm not really sure how to pronounce it.
Got it.
It roughly translates to go out and pursue space or something. They're pretty devoted. They've been doing it for a super long time. They started with mechanical systems, very much like what Mark is working on now. Not in the same mechanical vein of working identically, but they're moving parts, physically heavy masses, oscillating. And they switched away from that and went to pure electromagnetic. It made sense to them that within the standard Lorentz force and Maxwell's equations, there should be the ability to derive a force from space-time, knowing that the speed of light has a limited velocity. So they pursued that, they were successful, and they built, I think, now, maybe 16, 17, 18 different drives, probably about as many as Perez has, ironically. And both of those systems have shown something very interesting that we should point out on this show, and that is when you shut the systems off, they don't stop producing force.
When you shut the systems off, they don't stop producing force.
That's correct. So both Perez and
not forever. They slow down.
Right. But basically the thing is, when you cut off their power source, they seem to have a recoil effect, almost as if space-time is folding back in a manner of speaking. Now, that's of course speculation. We don't actually know what's happening because we haven't been able to verify, validate down to the fine degree what's going on. All we know is that when you disconnect their signal source and their power, even via physical mechanical relay switches, they don't stop pulling themselves in the direction that they were pulling themselves when they were on. And that's a particularly interesting phenomena that both those engines demonstrate, and they're not the only ones that talk about the same phenomenon. Some of the audience, maybe a very few, have heard of Eric Dollard, who has studied quite extensively the work of Heaviside, Maxwell, and of course Tesla. And he's also reported some of these similar effects. Whereas as he would say, we see the energy going into space, it seems to disappear, and we don't know where it's going. It can't go nowhere, so it's got to be doing something. Where is the energy going? It's just disappearing into space.
Are you sure it's not just a capacitor type effect?
The answer to that is time.
Are you sure it's not just like capacitance?
Capacitance is the measurement of the amount of K, or the value of differential charges to saturate a medium.
Right, it's just stored energy. I'm just saying, is there any way that you've got a capacitor that's just bleeding?
No. In this case, to answer your question specifically, a capacitor deals with a quantity of charges. Say I take 10 electrons from, let's say I take 10 electrons from this hand, and I put them on this hand. And so now this hand has some 10 electrons, and this hand is lacking. Between my two hands, we would have an electric field, and these two hands we call plates, and the assembly of these two hands we call capacitor, because we now have a lack of electrons on one side and excess of them on the other. In this case, we are not actually losing electrons. What we're doing is we're taking electrons on this hand and we're oscillating them back and forth. Energy is leaving because we're physically taking motion to create an electric field and move these electrons back and forth. So they produce an electric wave that travels along with them when this thing this electric wave travels out away. That energy is lost, and when we cancel those two electric waves in the same volume of space, the energy seems to disappear. It doesn't produce any vector potentials, but something does happen to space. And according to Einstein, there is a equivalency between mass and energy. And in this case, when we put electromagnetic energy that was produced by the motion of masses carrying electric charges, that energy has to go somewhere, and it goes into the stress energy momentum tensor. So space physically changes shape, it changes size. You could call it TARDIS mechanics. You can say the space now is bigger on the inside between those two elements. And so after you shut it off, it takes a while for all the individual particles at very far distances away from that space to have their signals respond to what's happened to that space. And we call that an information horizon, or a light speed bubble. And it takes a period of time for all that information to come back in. And that's the delay that we see when the drives are shut off. Is that all these other particles are still interacting. Their gravitational, electric, and magnetic fields are traveling through space and still coming back on that drive and affecting it. It's still producing a force because, well, they were affected at a far distance. But just as a start to blink out and be gone, and now we see it, that's what's basically happening here. The signal has blinked out. We've shut off the power source on our antenna, and our star is now dead, but distant matter is still seeing it, and it's still responding to it and sending back a field as a response to it. And that's that delay that was, in my opinion, that's my theory anyways.
That's fascinating.
And I think that theory is right on. We also we're having this discussion with all of the pioneers in this field about coining a term for the warp bubble metric. And I really want to push this out there. We don't want to name it after anyone because there's just so many people involved. So why not go after Star Trek and call it the Cochrane?
Absolutely.
Zephyr Cochrane. Thank you. Right on.
Yeah, that's what they called it in Star Trek. They had the micrometers that were measuring millicochrans, and then they had the massive warp drives that did 500 megacochrane or whatever, but for the Enterprise.
Oh, I love
Are these warp drives that you're talking about? Are they using negative energy, or are these kind of the iterations that don't actually require
RF.
that?
I can explain that.
RF energy.
It's not negative energy. What it's doing effectively is it's changing this energy density of the energy that the drive exists in. So in the vacuum, we already have a positive energy, and it's a rather large amount of positive energy. In terms of electromagnetic waves from the very large to the very small, that's effectively where we get our Casimir flows. It's just all of these electromagnetic waves, electromagnetic and scalar potential as well. So I can't just say electromagnetic and, limit it to the finite definition of Hertzian waves. Here we're talking about longitudinal modes of transmission as well. So this contains all waves. That's the vacuum. And there's so much energy there that's been produced by the motion of all matter that's ever existed, that we have a positive energy everywhere in space. So all we have to do is effectively take away some of that energy out of that space, and now we have the same thing as negative energy, because there's less in that space than there is in all the surrounding space. And what will happen is anything that's between the horizon of our lower energy space and our higher energy space will be pushed, because it's in the way, into the lower energy space. And that's how our drive produces a directional force.
Well, sure, but there's like the Alcubierre drive, like required that you had that below 0 point energy, negative energy density. Whereas there's other models of the Alcubierre drive, not called the Alcubierre drive, that don't actually have that negative energy density requirement. Right. And these warp bubbles like Perez is using, are they using that negative energy density, or is it one of those other models?
No, they're using the positive energy density, and so is White. In that new model, it recognizes that the ZPF has a positive energy density that's variable.
Well, I thought that the White thing was negative density because it was using the Casimir effect.
Well, it is negative energy density comparatively. It's relative. It's negative energy density relative to the surrounding vacuum conditions.
Sure, and that's what I'm talking about, right? There's some models of the Alcubierre drive that require that negative energy relative to the vacuum energy. And then there's other models that don't have that requirement. At least that's my reading of the things. And
Sony into some, but I haven't seen really any models that seem engineerable, which are primarily based off of a zero energy vacuum or a no energy density vacuum condition. All the models I've seen which seem remotely engineerable absolutely recognize the positive energy density of the vacuum. Or as you say, the universe is filled with light.
So you're saying, basically what you're saying is like the Alcubierre drive is not something that's engineerable in your opinion.
Well, it is. I'm saying it is engineerable because that negative energy density does not need an actual negative mass.
Oh,
I mean, it's negative relative to the zero, what we call zero energy. There is no finite energy. Everything's kind of referenced relatively to each other. Right. So like the lowest thing that we can measure is the energy of the vacuum, and we call that zero, although that there's a lot of energy there. And that's what the Alcubierre drive is trying to tap into, is getting below that vacuum point energy. At least that's my understanding of it. But then I did understand that there's other models that seem to be more serious, and I think that was Eric Davis's kind of point, is that these negative energy densities are really hard to come by outside of the Casimir cavities, and there might be ways to make a warp bubble without even getting below that vacuum energy point.
Hey, Mike, like you're talking about negative energy density, like gravity is actually negative energy density. And so when if the quantum echo hypothesis is right, you start up that field, you kick the Higgs bosons into the past, in order to satisfy in the brain of time that they land the law of conservation of mass energy, those Higgs bosons that are in that sort of foreign brain of time get wrapped in gravity, in negative energy density to balance the positive energy density from your sort of molecular constituents that end up in the past. And it's that negative energy density that I think that we'll see holds open the wormhole, so that what you're actually seeing is future quantum flight. And that's why I think sometimes you'll see those lights from those UAP, you'll see a big bright white light. I think it's because it's daytime on the other side of that wormhole. Sometimes you'll see red. I think it's because it's dusk or sunset on the other side of the wormhole. And sometimes you'll see ones that are haloed in black. And I think it's because it's night on the other side. But the gravity, the negative energy density that is enshrouding, your quantum echo it actually kind of warps and bends that light. So that's why it looks like a big bright ball of either red, black, or white. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what negative energy density is, or a form of it is gravity.
So your hypothesis is that when people are seeing these UFOs with these sort of halos, that it's because they are being viewed through a transition through time, and it's based on the light that is available through that sort of wormhole. That's your hypothesis, right?
Yeah. So we talk about well, in my latest podcast episode, I talk about I solve and tell everybody what the equation is and how to derive quantum gravity, and I put in there the pieces of information that I picked up, like from PBS Spacetime, and actually a lot of the things where I taught myself this, talk about like I taught myself quantum physics. Well, I put the actual bits and sound bites of where I learned the things that I learned in there. So it's like, it's not just like me saying it. It's like, okay, here is where I got that. And so there's this guy, Dr. Matt O'Dowd, who's like kind of one of these like TV sort of celebrity level astro or theoretical physicists. And he said that gravity comes from the Higgs field. The matter of our universe gets gravity from the Higgs field, because gravity is caused by the passage through the curvature of time. And so if the Higgs field causes gravity, and gravity is caused by going through the curvature of time. And an example of that is like you hit the gas in your car and you take off and you get pressed into the back of the seat. The reason you get pressed into the back of the seat is that when you move quicker through space, you move slower through time. Einstein's, proved that. Anyway, bottom line is when you move faster through space, you move slower through time, but you also have time dilation from gravity. And if you're staying at the same level in the gravity well of the Earth, there's a Higgs force that is trying to keep you in the same time. So when you accelerate, you're changing your time, you're slowing it down. And if the gravity is the force you feel as you pass through the curvature of time. And so like when you take off in a rocket, you're accelerating, so your time slows down, but you're leaving the gravity well of the Earth, so your time speeds up. And it's that tension in the Higgs string that causes the G's in the gravity that you feel. So we know, if Dr. O'Dowd, and I have no reason to think he's not, if he's right, if the Higgs field causes gravity and gravity is caused by passage through the curvature of time, then that means the Higgs string is really the time string. And so if the quantum echo hypothesis is right, and I also I haven't done this one yet, but he talks about how the left-handed electron gets hung up by the Higgs field as it picks up and ditches what's called a weak hypercharge. And that's what slows the electron down. So the principle of the V.A.G.E. is since we know the left-handed electron is slowed by the Higgs field is getting pushed on by the left-handed electron, right? Because that's like the third law of Newtonian sort of mechanics, right? The Newton's third law is that an action creates an equal and opposite reaction. So it's this left-handed electron that pushes on the Higgs field. Now, the graphene that I coat my disk in actually separates left and right-handed electrons. So it creates a high level of left-handed electron density. And so when it spins, right, and we can't just shove off essentially the Higgs field to decouple gravity. We can't shove it off. We have to push it like it's on a swing. And so that's why the V.A.G.E. has magnets and conducting fibers that are spokes. And so it goes like this. And so there's a circuit here. So you have an electromagnetic field. And then when it goes like this, you have nothing. It turns off. Then it goes like this. You have it again. And essentially, when you create that circuit, that harmonic circuit, you create a magnetic field that pulses. And
are you saying, somebody asked, are you saying Higgs stream or Higgs string?
String.
Okay.
Yeah. And so essentially, or I mean, the Higgs field, the Higgs string, however you want to kind of model it. But at the end of the day, when you push this Higgs field, you resonate that Higgs field. The hypothesis is that you create what's called a symmetry break, and you decouple essentially whatever's in the field, you decouple it from the rest of your sort of quantum remainder. And when that goes into the past, right? Because entropy and a lot of, I mean, Dr. O'Dowd talks about if it goes in the past, then there's tension in the Higgs string between the future and the past, and that tension is gravity. And so, and we know from the Hadron Collider, right, when those particles hit and the Higgs boson is released, it will go back in time and they will see the Higgs boson appear and decay before the collision happens. And so that's why I think that this is, you know, in some ways, this is what we see when we see these UAP. I don't know anything about what everybody else is doing, but that's why I think that this works. I mean, I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in engineering, and I'm a registered professional engineer in 2 states. So I know about physics, you know, I mean, I had to take it, but as an engineer, but the quantum physics was the stuff that I had to kind of bone up on and catch up with. So, anyway, at the end of the day,
what do you got? Yeah, no, that's great. What do you guys make of that, Jeremiah or Mark?
My personal opinion, I'm not a huge advocate of using the Higgs field as a reference because I'd like to refer more to the older schooler Tesla's Aether, if you will. It's the model that I came to understand through experimentation and reading old texts and stuff that was quite hands-on, and that just made a lot more sense than most of the stuff that you can reference in experiments regarding the Higgs field. But
is that because it's outside of the model that you use to understand, or because it's not a good model? Like, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion on it is that the particle model that refers to these individuated quantized sections of the universe that act in an exacting way is generally not a good description of the way the universe really works. As far as I've seen it, we have a dynamic universe where everything is in a state of continuous interaction, and the only thing that is able to be referenced in this universe is a relative frame against another. So even something like the Planck scale is not necessarily the same physical dimension of space for every single space. If you go in different spaces, you're going to have different amounts of compression and expansion. You're going to have different levels of energy. So even things like, I look at the universe as very dynamic, so things that refer to particles like, the Higgs boson, which is supposed to be this individuated quanta, I don't particularly prefer, because I think we can explain them just as well using electromagnetic wave interactions.
Right.
I think this is opinion.
Right. No, that's fair. And I think this is like the perfect kind of segue to how important it is for everyone to understand that when we talk about theoretical physics and we talk about the quantum world, any model we have is specifically created to give us an idea to contextualize systems that are virtually, there's no way for a human language or a human model to accurately depict these systems, right? Even when you were in high school, you looked at an atom, and you looked at the nucleus of an atom, and it looked like these little like blueberry, or the little blackberries, all these little tiny nodules, and then you see the electrons that look like pool billiard balls, and that's a model to help us understand, to wrap our heads around something that's virtually incomprehensible.
It's infinite. Every time we look at the nucleus of the atom, the nucleus just gets smaller. It's like falling down the rabbit hole, and there's another rabbit hole. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the better our equipment gets, the smaller our predictions that it are. Like, if you look at physics from 100 years ago, they say the nucleus of the atom was yay big, and then now they're saying, oh, it's probably like 1,000,000 times smaller than that. Right. What got 1,000,000 times smaller? The atom didn't change in size. What got smaller was our ability to look.
Right.
The Greek concept atomos.
Yeah, and I got a
small unit. You'll never find it.
Yeah, and I got to tell you too, like, I mean, everybody's talking about like complicated, fancy stuff, and that is cool, but that's not like how. The way that I came up with this is like really lowbrow. It's dumb. Like, I saw those Tic Tacs zipping around. They looked massless, right? Because they didn't have to, like, they were just stopping on a dime and changing directions and zipping off like a bullet. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, that thing's got to be massless. So what I looked up was what causes mass, and that's what Dr. O'Dowd said. Because I got to get rid of mass to make it fly like that. And so
right, so you're trying to reverse engineer this in a very simple model that you can contextualize.
Just logical Occam's razor. How do you do it? And so that's what I came up with. It's not pretentious. It's not particularly, bougie or educated or whatever. It's just like common sense logic. This is what happens. This is, a hypothesis for how to get rid of it. But then as I started seeing all these different things in, UAP sightings and video and stuff, I'm like, hey, that fits, that fits, that fits, that fits. So,
but don't you think, but let me ask you this, because human beings are brilliant at identifying patterns, whether there is a pattern there or not. And I'm just curious, because it is fun to put puzzle pieces together. And I'm not, again, Brad, like I'm definitely not shitting on your argument at all. I think it's it's worthy of investigation. My only pushback, or my only holes that I would poke are we trying to, because I think everyone does this, right? Everyone tries to, especially in this, the UFO topic, right? People want to understand and contextualize and start to fit pieces in the puzzle where they think they go. And every single person's model is a little bit different. And even though something feels intuitively like it fits, isn't that just the way our brains work? Aren't they always trying to put a puzzle together, whether or not there is a pattern there or not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what conspiracy theorists are. I mean, that's, self-fulfilling prophecies and self-licking ice cream cones and all that kind of stuff. You're right. I mean, that's definitely what it is. But what's going to happen is, and this is kind of where, like, I just put my money where my mouth is. I made the V.A.G.E, the Mark I, and it worked once, and it shaved like a few pounds off, and I'm certain that it works. Now I just made the Mark II. I'm almost done with it, and probably this weekend I'm gonna fire that thing up, and it's gonna fucking rip. And if it works, I'm gonna know, because that weight is just gonna. And I don't know if I told you, but I got the Mark II. It's much smaller. It's much tighter. And I'm going to set it on a scale, and I'm going to turn it on, and it's going to take off. And if it works, then the scale is just going to drop. The weight is going to drop. It's going to get lighter if it works. If it doesn't work, it ain't going to fucking get lighter. And then, all right, I fucked up. Doesn't work. But I'm pretty sure that it's going to fucking rip. We'll see. Into a fucking vortex.
So we should know by this weekend.
Yeah, man, I will live stream that motherfucker, you guys. I'm going to put more than one camera, too, so it's not just like...
All right, we're not trying to get... You can curse. We're not trying to get demonetized, though.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Get on that friggin' vortex, man. Get on the vortex.
Yeah, and then when it happens, you're going to be like, oh, how'd you do that?
So, well, we're looking forward to
torsion fields. Don't tell Grandma.
I just want to see like a physics rap battle, like just a quantum rap battle between these guys. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you all who have been supporting the Singularity Lab and the Unidentified Celebrity View. If you want to catch all of our shows on audio, you can check us out on Apple Music Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We want to thank our guest today for joining us here, Bradley Vorhees. He is the creator of Sonic Gravity and the experimenter behind the V.A.G.E, V-A.G.E. If you want to follow him, Bradley, how can people do that?
I'm on Sonic Gravity 1 on Instagram, Twitter. You probably see me there, and my website is sonicgravity.com. I just put out a podcast episode on the solution to quantum gravity, so I'm really excited to have like some physicists either tear it up or comment on it or whatever. So if you know one, let them know, because I just put it out there. I mean, if it's right, then it really like reconciles theoretical or sort of quantum field theory and general relativity. So I'm kind of excited to see what people think about it. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for joining us today. And, it's always great to have somebody poke holes in your argument and make it stronger. So go check his stuff out, and don't be afraid to hit him up. Thanks, Bradley. All right. Later. Jeremiah Exotic Propulsion. Can you tell people where they can find you, and if they want to learn more about your work, how they can do that?
I'm currently working up to producing a new channel where I can showcase everything
I
that I've
need
done.
Jeremiah. I need you to shout, brother.
Okay,
Your microphone
my mic
sucks.
There's something wrong with that mic. Yes, I have a new channel in the works. I have not uploaded any videos to it. I've launched it and it's sitting there. But what I would recommend is if anybody wants to do joint projects, experiments, I'm actively doing experiments, working with people one-on-one. Particularly, most of what I do and where my time goes is working with individuals one-on-one. Particularly those who are working with reactionless propulsion drives, inertial drives, anything that basically goes outside of the standard boundary of rockets that can allow us to move through space and time in any way, shape, or form without throwing mass out the backside. So they can email me there at exoticpropulsion@gmail.com. Anybody who has interesting ideas or would like to discuss can email me at exoticpropulsion@gmail.com. And once I launch that channel, we'll go ahead and do a big promotion on it. But until that time, yeah, I'll just be showing up on channels like this and doing what I can to add to the community, keeping people moving forward. And we'll keep APEC, of course, always moving forward. That's a huge amount of time poured into APEC. That's why we started it. That's why we keep on maintaining it.
Anytime you have, Jeremiah, anytime you got something cool you want to share, just hit me up, brother. We'd love to have you back.
I'll let you know. I'll send you a text with pics, and you can always take a look and see if it's something interesting that you want to explore.
I'm sure it will be. Hit me up.
We'll try.
Thanks, Jeremiah. All right, bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Jon Snow, you know him from Game of Thrones.
Tell us, Jon Snow, when is the new season coming out?
It's over already. Winter came.
Winter came. No, I'm kidding. The creator of Falcon Space. Can you tell folks if they want to follow your work, maybe they want to contribute at the lab? I don't know. How can folks find you?
I'm right here at 73 Waggerer Road in Hawthorne, New Jersey. And if you're flying in, closest airport is Newark at Liberty International. And yeah, you can come down here to the lab and check it out, help out. We do have volunteers that come in every now and again. Brad has been down here twice already. We actually put him up in the house. There's a guy.
I heard your rooms are very clean. So.
Oh yeah, I'm a little bit of a neat freak, which is necessary when you have so much shit, for all this research. To contact me personally, alternativepropulsion@gmail.com, or you could respond to any of the APEC email invites so that those come straight back to me, and get in contact, work on stuff together. Just like Jeremiah, I'm interested in anything, warp drive related, that's actual hardware. If you start talking to me about theory, I'll tell you to go do it yourself.
You're an engineer.
Yeah, we're engineer, we're nuts and bolts, and that's what we need in order to move forward. Or actually, while I was, if you noticed, my head was down while I was while we were doing the show. I was texting my guy who basically dumpster dives at Sandia National Laboratories and gets all their old equipment. That I need a new RF amplifier because the one he got me is broken. So yeah, so that's the kind of stuff we do here at the lab.
Oh, I hope he didn't sell you the broken one.
Yeah, he sold me the broken one. But he also sold me a good one. He doesn't even know what he's selling. They just come in pallets. So
sounds like you could also use donations. Can people contribute to the lab?
Yeah, sure. We're accepting donations of both time and money. And if you want to come down and contribute, or you could reach out to me at alternativepropulsion@gmail.com to set up some sort of donation.
That's awesome. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and hit me up anytime. We'd love to have you back soon.
Peace.
Later.
Campbell Morieri with the $10 dono Singularity Lab. Love you, Campbell. Thank you so much for that love. Make sure if you're just joining us, hit that subscribe button. Click the bell if you want to know whenever we go live. All you got to do is hit it right now. And what else, guys? What do we got coming up tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity Review?
Well, great question, Michael. We're gonna be having on Frank Milburn. He's been in contacts with Christopher Mellon, so he's gonna break down the NDAA for us from his point of view, which I think will be a lot of fun. And then in hour 2, we're just gonna take calls and talk about whatever we want.
Fantastic.
Whatever you guys want, whatever the audience wants.
Whatever the audience wants, I love it. What about Rather Be Squidding? Anything new coming up on your channel?
Yeah, I'm digging into these hypersonics and how they might have exposed the UFOs to us all. I've been saying this for a long time now, but I think I might finally get a video out here soon.
Sweet.
Nice.
Well, we certainly appreciate you all joining us again. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. You can check us out on Spotify as well. If you want to donate, hit the Patreon just down below. And we'll see you guys next Thursday. Do you want to know about the future? I do. And I know you do too. That's why we do what we do, right here at the Singularity Lab, just for you. Do you want to know about stories about breaking technology? Science? Look right here, I'm looking at my sheet. Marty did it, why can't you? Remember, this is a public access channel. We rely on your donations, so just hit the Patreon. So we can continue to bring you updated science and technology breaking news every single day.